In 2009, Disney acquired Marvel. In 2014, Disney released their first movie based on a Marvel comic. And no one knew. On this episode of Moving Panels, we discuss Big Hero 6. Welcome to Moving Panels, the podcast where we discuss movies and TV shows based on, inspired by, and adapted from the world of comic books. I'm your host, Laramy Wells, and joining me today, returning once again, it's Deanna Titshaw. How are you, Deanna?
I am great. I love that we are finally discussing a Disney movie. That's all up in my business.
We're definitely discussing a Disney movie. This is a Disney movie. But we'll get into that a little bit more. So we are talking about the Disney movie that is based. No, I can't say based. It's inspired by the comic book Big Hero 6 from Marvel Comics. A lot of people did not know that this was a Marvel comic book when it was released. I think it confused people to see then Stan Lee have his little cameo at the end of the movie. Did you know it was a Marvel comic when you originally saw it?
I did not, and I did not realize it was even associated with Marvel until I watched that end credit scene, and it was like, oh, Stan Lee.
Yeah, of course, again, I think there's a lot of just your regular audience who, even when they saw the Stan Lee, they were like, why is Stan Lee playing that character? Why is Stan Lee showing... I still don't think they realized it was a Marvel comic.
No, probably not.
Do you know how it's connected to Marvel Comics?
I do not.
The X-Men.
Really?
Yes, so... If you are not familiar, the X-Men there's so many X-Men, so many mutants, that there are branches that kind of take care of other parts of the world. Most people are familiar with Alpha Flight, who is like the Canadian X-Men team. And then there's Excalibur, who's the United Kingdom team of the X-Men. Winter Guard, which is the Russian team. Well, Big Hero 6, that's your Japanese team of the X-Men.
Okay.
So, in fact, when Big Hero 6 first premiered in 1998, the actual name of the comic was Sunfire and Big Hero 6. And Sunfire, if you're not familiar, was an X-Man. And so he's the one that kind of initiates the team. Another member of the original Big Hero 6 in 1998 was actually Silver Samurai.
I actually don't know who Silver Samurai is.
You never saw the Wolverine movie?
I did. But it was so bad, I must have blocked it out.
Now, I'm not talking about Wolverine Origins, though. I'm talking about The Wolverine.
Oh, that one was not as bad. Yes.
Yeah, that takes place in Japan.
Oh,
he was
yes.
I remember now. The old guy.
Yes.
Yeah, that's Silver Samurai.
Oh, okay.
So he was originally a member of Big Hero 6. Debuted in September of 1998. It was titled Sunfire and Big Hero 6. It was actually only 3 issues. That was it. 3 issues, told one story arc, and then done. Now, that wasn't the end of the team. They appeared in like issues of Alpha Flight and I think some of the X-Men. But then they got their own title again 10 years later in September of 2008, and that one was just titled Big Hero 6. You lost Sunfire, and Silver Samurai. That's when we gain Wasabi and Fred.
So that's when Disney decided to pluck it out of the comic book world.
Well, actually, I don't think that's why. I think it was because Silver Samurai, I think, was in the Wolverine movie, and then Sunfire was an X-Man. Fox at that time still was not owned by Disney, and so remember, Fox had all of the rights to anything X-Man related. Mm-hmm. And so they couldn't use the team that had Sunfire and Silver Samurai in it because those characters were owned by Fox.
That makes sense.
So we needed this other one. The 2008 version was, again, another short run. It was only 5 issues. And that one is more of where they get the look a little bit more for the movie, because it was very manga style. You know, a lot more colorful. Didn't look as much like an X-Man comic like the first run did. Again, 2008. The Big Hero 6 comic. The movie was released on November 7th, 2014. Now, this is a Disney movie, as we've said. It does not bear the Marvel title. It doesn't say Disney presents a Marvel, Studios film. It doesn't say Disney presents Marvel's Big Hero 6. It's just Walt Disney's Big Hero 6.
Right, yeah, you get that. You even get the like the Steamboat Willie at the beginning. There's no fun Marvel Studios A thing. No.
Nope. So there's nothing. So what happened, for those people who don't know, so Disney acquired Marvel. I like to use the word acquired and not bought, because a lot of people confuse the two. It's the same thing with Pixar. Disney doesn't technically own Pixar. It's just a subsidiary. It's part of their company, but Pixar still works independently, just like Marvel still works independently. So all the Marvel Studio movies, that's fully controlled by Marvel, not Disney. But Disney acquired Marvel in 2009, and Bob Iger, who was the head of Disney, he went to the departments, the animation departments and all of that, and said, hey, I want you to look through all of this Marvel stuff that we have acquired. I want you to find one of the lesser, more obscure Marvel titles, and we're going to make it into our own movie. And so I don't know who came up with it, but they found this Big Hero 6. And again, you're talking in its entire life, only had 8 issues. Definitely obscure. Definitely one lesser known, because again, people didn't know that it was a Marvel comic. And they decided to make it their own. In fact, Paul Briggs, who wrote the story for the movie, he didn't even read all 8 issues. I think he didn't read the original 3. I think he just read the 5 from 2008. And then Robert Baird, who was the screenwriter, he admitted he didn't read any of it.
So that's where we get the not loosely based, just inspired. Really just saw the pictures and ran with it.
You know what? I don't even think there's truth to that, and you'll find out more. So just to let everyone know, I'm familiar with the comic. I have read all 8 issues. The 2008 run, real easy to find. You can probably find it online or somewhere. The 1998 issues are a little harder to find, but if you know where to look, you can probably find them to read online. I am familiar with the comics. Deanna is not. So this is going to be a lot of shock and awe, I think, for Deanna when it comes to the reveals that I'm about to give.
Well, already the first thing I thought was when you said they were the Japanese team, but then Disney invented San Francisco as some sort of American-Japanese hybrid. So already going off the rails a little bit there.
All right, we'll get into all of that. But let's start off into the characters. Of course, the hero of our movie is, in fact, Hero. I did find this interesting. He is voiced by Ryan Potter. Do you know who Ryan Potter is?
I do. Doesn't he? Or I may be thinking of somebody else. I am thinking of somebody else.
So Ryan Potter is Gar, Beast Boy, on the HBO Max show Titans.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So currently he's a DC character, but he was the voice of Hero for this movie. Again, this was a very much Disney-fied movie. They made Hero so that he becomes really your typical Disney. It's kid learning to be a grown-up, story. It's a coming-of-age story with Hero that he has to learn to live on his own and all that. And that is not the case in the comic books. In fact, Tahashi, and please correct me if I'm saying any of these names wrong, Tahashi, his older brother... Tadashi, yeah.
Yes.
Completely made up for the movie.
Really?
Does not exist in the comic books at all. In fact, Hero's mother exists in the comic books. Hero never had a sibling. His father died, but he lives with his mom, and he seems to have a pretty happy life. There's no sad story of the older brother in anything.
So there's probably no Aunt Cass either. Their aunt. No.
Oh no.
Disney's always got to throw in that no parents, either no or only one parent in a Disney movie.
Yeah, Disney and Steven Spielberg always have to have parent issues. But yeah, Tadashi, voiced by Daniel Henney. If you're not familiar, Daniel Henney, we kind of mentioned this a little bit earlier, talking about Wolverine in the horrible X-Men Origins Wolverine movie. Daniel Henney is actually Agent Zero in that movie. So he was the voice of Tadashi for this movie. Again, not in the comic, though. Completely made up for this movie.
Just so they could Disney it up.
Yeah. So then the question is, well, what about Baymax? Because he's a creation of Tadashi in the movie. Well, Hero made him. I mean, they established even in the movie, Hero's highly intelligent. Hero knows how to build robots. he's built by Hero in the comic books. In fact, Baymax first off, very Disney-fied. He's this inflatable, cute little medical robot, with a cute little face, and definitely we can sell toys of Baymax.
Oh, yeah.
He's even voiced by a comedic actor. He's voiced by Scott Adsit, who was Pete on 30 Rock, if you remember that. I couldn't really think of anything else he was in, but that was what I first pictured. But in the comics, do you know his name's not Baymax?
No.
Well, it is and it isn't. His name in the comic is Monster Baymax.
So they just shortened it down because you can't have monsters in Disney movies being heroes.
Well, and that's the exact thing. So Hero created Baymax as a personal bodyguard / butler / chauffeur. And Baymax actually looks human. He looks like just this big, burly dude. You can kind of tell he's a robot because usually his eyes are glowing. And he just will stand there. There's even one part I remember from one of the comics where he's just standing in the rain. But he's just this giant dude. But when Hero's in trouble, or when they go to face the villains, when Big Hero 6 becomes a thing, in the first run, in the 1998 run, Baymax turns into a dragon.
Oh.
Yeah. He turns into this pretty much giant lizard-looking creature. And then in the 2008 run, he turns into kind of this transformer-looking thing. He actually looks like a robot.
Well, that makes a little more sense when it comes to robot. But a dragon's a creature. Is it like a mechanical dragon?
I think yes, but it actually in the comics looks like a dragon. Like he looks like he's got scales. It doesn't look mechanical when he's the lizard dude, dragon, whatever it is. So I don't know. But yeah, Baymax not as lovable and would not have a Disney XD show or whatever it was they did the Big Hero 6. Definitely wouldn't have one based off of that comic book character.
No. Even though it sounds really cool.
Oh yeah, again, for a comic book, it works great. But yeah, not for a Disney movie. They definitely changed that. But again, it gets better and better with each one of the characters. So let's move on to Go-Go. In the comic book, it's Go-Go Tamago, who is voiced by Jamie Chung. Are you familiar with Jamie Chung?
Yes, I believe she played Mulan in Once Upon a Time.
Oh, I think she did. I didn't even think about that one. She did. Of course, when I saw her, I thought of Chi-Chi from Dragon Ball Evolution.
Yes, I forgot about that too.
Yeah, and she was also in Sucker Punch.
Oh, that's a great movie.
Yeah, that's one of the Zack Snyder forgotten movies. Mm-hmm. And she was Stu's wife in the Hangover sequels.
Yes, she was.
Mm-hmm. Yep. But Go-Go Tamago, of course, we know the character from the movie. Explain what her abilities are in the movie.
So in the movie, she is able to make these anti-gravity wheels to make a really fast bike. And then she uses those to kind of make skates so that she can go really, really fast. And then she can throw them and they can bounce off the walls and hit things and all that.
So in the comic book, she's a convict.
That's funny.
Yeah, she's a convict who agrees to become a test subject. And the test subject is for her to try out this exosuit. And the exosuit gives her the ability to turn herself into pretty much a ball of energy and launch herself, at super speed. And so, yeah. And she joins Big Hero 6, which is, I'll get into this a little bit more in the moving panel section, is a government-controlled group. But she joins Big Hero 6. It's kind of like the Suicide Squad. She joins Big Hero 6 to avoid being sent back to prison.
Wow. And
yeah.
in this, they make her this. She's the cool one. Which I guess could be someone who evolved into a convict, but she's a feminist. I remember she tells Hero to woman up instead of man up.
Yeah, no, in the comics, now I'm not going to say they don't have that little aspect in the comics with her and Honey Lemon, but in the comics, she's the almost the loose cannon of the group. She almost doesn't trust the rest of them. She's extremely jealous of Honey Lemon in the comic book. And that's for reasons that, again, we're about to get into. But yeah. So speaking of Honey Lemon, let's talk about Honey Lemon. So Honey Lemon, voiced by Genesis Rodriguez, who I wasn't familiar with as anything else. Apparently she was in the movies Identity Theft, Man on the Ledge, What to Expect When You're Expecting, but I didn't recognize her. What's funny is she's Hispanic, and so she actually voices Honey Lemon in the Spanish dub as well. So if you watch this movie with, the Spanish dubbing, it's the same actress playing Honey Lemon.
That makes sense, because in the movie, she's the only character that rolls the R in hero, in the name hero.
Yeah. What's also funny is she's wouldn't you say probably the most American character?
Oh, absolutely. Like blonde hair, tall, skinny. Yeah.
So let me reiterate again. This was the Japanese team. So in the comic books, they're all Japanese. But in the comic books, Honey Lemon looks American. She has the blonde hair. She has the blue eyes. She looks American. But she is supposed to be Japanese. In fact, I think her real name is like Eiko, I think is what her real name is. Mm-hmm. So let's do this again. Explain for everybody what Honey Lemon's abilities are in this movie.
She takes a certain type of metal, of course I forget exactly what it's called, and mixes it with other chemicals, and she's able to basically make these like color balls that can like become solid or they become powder, like just in different consistencies, if that's the right word. And then she can like throw them and make them stick or make them do whatever in her little purse where she makes her concoctions.
Yeah. So in the comic books, the only part of that is true is the purse. Yeah. So in the comic books, they do make Honey Lemon where she is this intelligent scientist, and she actually has, instead of creating this substance like she does in the movie, she figures out a way to create a mini wormhole.
Oh, and how is that helpful to the team?
Well, so going back to the Marvel connection, she actually uses her discovery along with Pym particles. Those of you who don't understand the connection, they're Hank Pym, Ant-Man, the original Ant-Man. So she uses her ability with the wormholes and with Pym particles so that she can pretty much take anything and make it fit in her purse. And not only that, because her purse is ultimately a wormhole, her purse is bottomless.
So she has a Mary Poppins bag.
That's exactly what I said when I first discovered it. She had, and she calls it her power purse. And so anything they need, it's kind of one of those things where it's it's the convenient superhero. Anything they need to get out of these situations, she can usually reach in, pull out, and voila. They do give her a little bit of a weakness, talking about how she can only manifest something one at a time. So if she pulls something out, that has to return before she can pull something else out. Mm-hmm. So they do get into that. I'll probably get into this a little bit more in the moving panels aspect, but I want to go ahead and say it now since we're talking about the character. Remember the comic debuted in the late 90s. Honey Lemon is a very stereotypical comic book female from the 90s, if you know what I'm saying.
I don't, because I was born in the 90s, so I did not read any of that.
Well, I'm more talking about the way she was drawn.
Got it. Yep. Yeah.
In fact, even in the 2008 version, they draw her in less clothing.
That's disappointing.
Yeah, she is wearing pretty much I don't know if you'd say a bra or a bikini top for the majority of the 2008 run. Very much, that definitely, again, as we talked about with Baymax, would not have appeared in a Disney movie.
Yeah. And because she is so skinny, like, she's probably the only one that doesn't have any of the typical comic body type.
Yeah. No, in the movie, they make her just very, like, girl next door, sweet and innocent. And
yes.
Completely different. Moving on, we got what are technically the two newer characters from the comics. And that's Wasabi and Fred. Let's talk about Wasabi first. Wasabi, voiced by the very funny Damon Wayans Jr. I don't think I have to name what he's from.
No.
If you don't know.
No, he's great.
Do you know he had actually? Do you know what his full name is from the comics?
I don't.
Wasabi no Ginger.
That's terrible.
Yeah, I don't know. The things they apparently got away with back in the 90s and early 2000s with Japanese characters. Gogo Tamago, which Tamago loosely in Japanese translates to egg. Honey Lemon, and Wasabi no Ginger. They are naming these Japanese people after items on a Japanese menu.
Right, that's terrible.
That's horrible.
And so in the comics, those were their actual names? Or were they nicknames like they say in the movie?
Yeah, so in the movie, they call him Wasabi, and then there's even the throwaway line where he yells back, he goes, "I got wasabi on my shirt one time!" No, in the comic book, that is their actual names. Wasabi no Ginger is his name.
Jeez. That's just so bad.
Yeah, there's never any allusion to the fact that it's a nickname or a code name. It's Wasabi no Ginger. So let's do it again. Tell us, Deanna, what's his powers from the movie?
He makes these cool, laser knives for his hands. And he can, cut through things and all that fun stuff.
And guess what? It's the same in the movie. The only difference is it's his mutant ability.
Oh, okay.
There is no suit that does it. He can manifest. He usually manifests them into little daggers. Almost kind of looks like a Wolverine because he gets them to come out between his fingers, and then he throws them. That is his ability. He also carries samurai swords. In the comic book, he's actually a chef. There's no artist. There's no scientist aspect to him at all. He's a chef. He cooks for the team all the time.
Wasabi no Ginger's a chef. All right.
Yeah, there you go. And then they call it ki energy, I think, or it's probably pronounced some other different way. I think it's QI in the comics. But yeah, same ability. It's just in the comic book, it's his mutant ability. It's not a suit that allows him to do it. It's his actual mutant ability.
Yeah, of course, in the movie, they don't allude to them being mutants at all. They all have invented their superpower, quote unquote.
Well, and also they can't, because that again goes to the Fox ownership of X-Men and anything mutant, which we won't get off a side note. Same reason why originally Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver, when they appeared in Age of Ultron, there's no mention of them being mutant.
They were miracles.
They got their ability through some other means. So yeah, so now let's get into Fred, because this one was fun. So Fred, voiced by comedian again, T.J. Miller, also done comic movies before. He's Weasel in the Deadpool movies.
Yes, has a very recognizable voice.
Oh yeah. He is. Spoiler: he's killed very halfway through the movie of Transformers: Age of Extinction. Mm-hmm. He was in Ready Player One. I'm kind of going with those geeky movies that he's in. Not his first time voicing either. He was the main character in the Emoji Movie.
Right.
That movie that everybody loved, the Emoji Movie.
Yeah.
Of course, in this one, he's kind of the odd man out of the team. He's not one of the smarter team members. He's the school mascot that just likes to hang out with them. They do reference the fact that he's a comic book fan.
Yes.
Which I thought was funny, and I'll explain that in a minute. And actually, let's go ahead. So, what is Fred's ability in the movie?
Well, like you said, Fred isn't a scientist. So, Hero kind of invented his costume and stuff for him. And he's still just has this three-eyed monster mascot costume on, but he can breathe fire.
So do you remember when he's first introduced and he shows Hero a comic book, and he holds the comic book up and he says he had asked Honey Lemon to make it so he can turn himself into a real fire-breathing monster?
Yes. And she said...
And he holds up a comic...
She said, that's not science.
Yeah. And he holds up a comic book, and the comic book shows a guy with this giant dragon over top of him, kind of you can tell he's turning into him. That's exactly what he is in the comic books.
That's awesome.
Yeah. He is a mutant who has the ability... He doesn't really transform into the dragon. It's more like the dragon becomes an essence, an aura around him. And so, kind of I would say, imagine Pacific Rim, but it's something he creates around him. And then as he reaches forward, the creature reaches forward and can punch people and grab people. And so he literally turns it, I guess, sticking with the Japanese stuff, he turns into a kaiju.
That's really cool.
I think, well, again, they're sticking with the whole science and everything had to be made by science. But I think that would have been cool for a Disney movie if he had the ability to do that.
Oh, absolutely.
But they kept this one very, like, everything was science-based. Everything was created. Everything, there wasn't no superpowers. Everything was something that was created.
Yeah, I guess, like you said, keep away from those, the rights for the mutants.
Yeah. And then our villain, spoiler, I mean, again, you're listening to the podcast about Big Hero 6. You know we're going to talk all about it. The villain, Robert Callahan, voiced by James Cromwell. I mean, that'll do, pig. That'll do. How do you have your villain voiced by James Cromwell?
I actually don't know anything else that James Cromwell's been in, like, by name.
Other than Babe?
If you could believe it, I've never seen Babe.
What? Yeah, we won't get into that right now, but oh my goodness. Come on, the famous clip of him looking down at the pig, that'll do, pig. That'll
I've heard people say that before, but...
Yeah, that was James Cromwell.
Yeah.
All right, I'm determined now to find something you've seen with James Cromwell in it. The Green Mile. You saw The Green Mile, right?
Nope.
You never saw oh my goodness. Let's see. I mean, he was in Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom, but probably didn't.
Oh, is he the grandfather? Yes.
Yeah.
I know that.
Yeah, that's James Cromwell.
Gotcha.
American Horror Story. You don't watch American Horror Story? He was in, yeah, because he was in a season of that. Okay. Well, he is a very, like, he played George Bush Sr. in the movie W. Still no?
Nope.
Okay, this is getting
it's
sad.
It's just sad, yes.
This is getting sad. But he also has another comic book reference. He actually played Gwen Stacy's dad in Spider-Man 3.
I was just looking to see what he had played in that. So, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Wasn't he a police, he was like the police chief or something?
Yeah.
Yeah. Very cool.
So yeah, that's him. So yeah, he's the villain. Again, not from the comic books. No other character in this movie is even named from a character from the comics. There are no... Other than your Big Hero 6 characters, who, as you just heard, are pretty much by name only, nobody else is from the comics. So there is no Aunt Cass, there is no Robert Callahan, there is no, I even forgot his
Tadashi.
name. The other, well, I'm talking about the other, the rich guy who they think
Alistair
is the villain
Cray.
for the yeah, he's not from the comics. There's no other connection whatsoever. So what are your thoughts about all that, now knowing that these characters are completely different from their source material?
I think that they could have taken it and made it, or not Disney, but Marvel could have taken it and made it a very cool superhero movie. I think as a standalone, if you didn't compare it to the comics, it's still an amazing, like, Disney-made movie. But as for it being like anything like the comics, it's just kind of sad.
I mean, even aspects of the character. So go back to Fred, the whole thing about Fred secretly being, filthy rich and, all that, that's not from the comics. I mean, they end up in the second run, in the 2008 run, they go to America, and that is where they meet Fred, but Fred is still Japanese. It's just he's been living in America, but looks American, kind of like Honey Lemon did. He's still got the t-shirt, and I think he still wears the skull cap like the character does in the movie. But yeah, this is going to be a rough one when we get into our next section, talking about the comic book connections, because as you're finding out, there really aren't any. So we'll probably rehash some of this stuff, some of the same stuff, and I'll probably talk a little bit more about what the comic book is. But yeah, there's really no other connections.
Hello movie viewers and fellow movie lovers. My name is Tim Williams and I'm the creator and host of Movie Views Presents the 80s Flick Flashback Podcast. See, I love the 80s and I have a great appreciation and nostalgic passion for the classic 80s flicks that birthed my love for movies and ultimately helped shape my childhood. On each episode, I'll discuss, with a special guest co-host of course, a different film from the 1980s. We'll share memories, favorite characters, iconic scenes, and even share some behind-the-scenes stories along the way. We'll discuss famous blockbusters like Raiders of the Lost Ark, Coming to America, Ghostbusters, Dirty Dancing, Top Gun, Die Hard, and many, many more, as well as some other cult classics and even lesser-known flicks we discovered on cable TV or the now-defunct video rental stores. Remember those? No matter what 80s flick we choose to talk about, we'll always have a good time, so come and check us out. You can find the 80s Flick Flashback podcast on major podcasting platforms like Apple Podcast, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Anchor, and more. Be sure to subscribe or follow so you don't miss a single episode. Once again, I'm Tim Williams, and I hope you'll join me for the next 80s Flick Flashback.
All right, this is the moving panel section, which, as I just mentioned, not going to have an awful lot to talk about here because there is no connection to the storylines, the elements of the comic other than those names, and a few of their powers are similar. As I stated earlier, this is a Japanese superhero group. The formation of the group in the comics is they were government created. They are ran by the government. The government tells them where to go, what to do. They are pretty much agents, like they actually call themselves agents several times in the comics. They're state sanctioned. Their job is well, I guess Avengers are Earth's mightiest heroes, but their job is to protect Japan. That is their job. Anything that happens, that is their job. Like I said, the movie does more follow the second iteration of the team, because the first iteration featured characters like Silver Samurai and Sunfire, who are X-Men related characters who Disney could not touch at that time because they were Fox properties. And again, they had the X-Men connection. Right. Wasabi and Fred were mutants. The others, their powers were from a suit or an invention, but the rest of them were mutants. Although part of me wants to say that they loosely say that Hero is a mutant. That's where his intelligence comes from. But I don't think that that's 100% clear.
That would make sense. In the comics, is he young, like a young prodigy like he is in the movies?
Oh, yeah. No, he's still in school. They even do some things where he has to kind of find a way to get away from school to do some of the things that he does. In the second run where they go to America, it's part of keeping their cover is that he has to, stay in school. So there's a whole part where the rest of the team is doing something while he's at school. His mom, I mentioned earlier that he does have a mom in the comic book. She's not aware of anything to my knowledge. And so it's all kept a secret from her. I guess you could say like the Aunt May kind of aspect to her.
Well, not the new Aunt May.
But yeah, look, that's all Kevin Feige. Because, Kevin Feige said he didn't want any of the Marvel heroes having secret identities.
That's very different than typical, which I suppose maybe what he was going for.
Because you look at Spider-Man, not only does May find out at the end of the first movie, but then everybody finds out at the end of the second movie.
That is wild. That was, yeah.
So, but different movie. Let's stay back on Big Hero 6. So, like I said, there are two runs of comics. There's the 1998 run that was only 3 issues, and then there's the 2008 run, which was 5 issues. They are one comic. In the 1998 version, their villain is a ghost-like character called Everwraith. And Everwraith it's really confusing. Everwraith is the manifestation of the ghosts of the Hiroshima victims.
That's complex.
Mm-hmm. But then later he talks about how he's all of Japan. Like he even says at one time in the comics, he yells out, I am Japan. And his motivation, which I did actually find kind of interesting for a villain, his motivation is he wants to cause another catastrophe in Japan because when Hiroshima happened, Japan bounced back with such great force that they became a dominant country in the world.
Right.
And he feels like Japan is starting to flatline, and so he wants to cause another catastrophe to kind of reboot Japan again. So, which I think is a great motivation for a comic book villain, for a supervillain, whatever you want to call it.
Right. Some of the best villains are the ones that think they're doing the right thing.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly my point. You know, and even though he's a ghost, but yeah, he thinks what he's doing is right. And in the 2008 run, it's extremely confusing. So they face these three villains. One is kind of like a thing, the thing type creature. One is a like Deathstroke, like really good with guns and all type. And I can't remember what the third one is. But they face them, and then when they beat them, they find out that they're really just regular people that apparently were like possessed in some way, but then it's not ghosts. What you end up finding out later is that it's this girl who somehow projects these three powers onto people. And they even do in the third one where Honey Lemon actually becomes the villain for a little while because she gets possessed.
Yeah.
And then two of their side characters also get possessed. And so it's just very weird villains, very weird, but there you have it. That's really how that lays out.
That's very interesting. It seems like a lot of thought was put into the Hiroshima villain is really like, that's so crazy to me. I mean, I can understand why Disney wouldn't put that in a movie because kids wouldn't understand that.
Oh yeah.
But that, I feel like that would have, like I said, like missed opportunity for Marvel, because I think that would have been super cool in a Marvel movie.
Yeah, it could have been interesting. Well, but you know what? Robert Callahan was not a bad villain once you find out like what his motivation is.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like you do find out that truly like Aleister Crowley really is the villain.
Yeah, it's corporation, which is I almost think becomes a comic book trope in a lot of things. It's these corporations that are ruining,
Yeah.
Especially when you look at more recent things, really Amazon Prime, The Boys, and even the new Invincible. A lot of that comes down to corporation stuff and things being controlled by a corporation.
That's true.
So we talked about earlier, the movie does remove some of the cheesiness, I would even say, of the comic book. As amazing as that is. For instance, Go-Go, when she uses her superpower in the comic book, she actually yells Go-Go Tamago and then turns into an energy ball.
Yeah.
But I'm so glad that she doesn't do that. I mentioned about, and not just the cheesiness, but the cringe factors. We talked about the almost Japanese stereotype of having the characters named after Japanese dishes.
Well, my first thought when you said she yells Go-Go Tamago is that like Go-Go Power Rangers. Like it's...
yeah. I guess it's a very Japanese thing, but so cheesy. And then, like I said, Honey Lemon is extremely overtly sexualized in the comic. She, again, when she becomes the villain in the second run, the first time you see her as the villain, she's just in a bikini. That's it. Full bikini.
Once again, that is so disappointing.
Yeah. And then even after, I think all she does is she puts on like a little jacket. So she's still got the bikini top on, but she's got this, open jacket over top of it.
Yeah, because that's going to help.
But yeah, they overly sexualize her. And they do it a little bit with Go-Go too. There's these moments of where Go-Go and Honey Lemon are together and they're like talking with Hero, and some of the other boys at the school are, talking about how does Hero know these, hot older women. And it's just, again, cringeworthy when you're reading it in the comic book.
Yeah, didn't you say something about Go-Go being jealous of Honey Lemon? Did we get to that?
Yes. So there's a little bit of jealousy, and it's more just in the fact that Honey Lemon is kind of the government's, little prize hero, and that she's always favorably looked upon by everybody, whereas Go-Go is not. And so there's really just that jealousy there. But at the same time, there's a lot of aspects where they're kind of a team.
Right.
So if anything, it's like a sisterly relationship.
Gotcha.
But I mean, that's pretty much it. I don't know if I can talk any more about it because there are no comic book aspects to it other than, like I said, the character name. So I think that's about it. So you got any thoughts about the movie in general, or?
The movie itself, I think, unfortunately, was overshadowed a bit by Frozen because I'm fairly certain they came out the same year. But
This Frozen you speak of, I don't.
Never heard of it before. Man with two young daughters, never heard of Frozen before.
Yeah, no. And what's crazy is you said that Frozen actually came out the year before.
Oh, okay. But I mean, the Frozen fever was still.
Oh yeah.
Still is. But yeah, it's I don't think it got the hype it deserved not as a comic book movie, but as a Disney movie. I think even though they really loosely based the characters, I think it was a very well-made movie. Like I said, it gets me in my feelings.
Yeah, again, they definitely went after that. They Disney-fied this comic book is what they did.
Oh yeah. And
I don't know what their intention was, because you almost even get from the Stan Lee cameo that happens at the end, which is, let's also point out how we know it's a Marvel movie. It was a post-credit scene.
Right. With Stan Lee.
Yeah. Post-credit scene like Marvel does, and it's Stan Lee shows up like Marvel does. And they set it up for what you think is going to be a sequel.
Right.
But yet all they ever did was they continued the story in television show form.
Yes. Which it's just like the TV show I've watched a few episodes of is just like, that is definitely made for kids. Like, it's just a dorky, like...
Oh, I'm sure.
Yeah. Disney XD cartoon.
So there has been talk, and I'm going to say very loose talk. I'm going to say probably no merit to it whatsoever. But there has been talk of bringing Big Hero 6 into the MCU. I know there's been word that it may happen. There's been word that it's not happening. Of course, we know with Marvel, especially Kevin Feige, that if something gets leaked, he tries to squash it sometimes, but then it's still actually true.
Right.
So whether it's true or not, what are your thoughts of bringing Big Hero 6 into the MCU? Should they bring in the Disney version of Big Hero 6, or should they go with the comic book version of Big Hero 6?
I was just about to say, if they were trying to integrate this version, I wouldn't like it. I feel like that...
You wouldn't want this big Stay Puft Marshmallow Baymax walking alongside
Spider-Man,
Captain Marvel and Spider-Man. Yeah.
No. I think if they were to use the comic book versions and like retell the origins, I think that may be able to work, but definitely not. I mean, it's bringing a cartoon into a real world movie. Like, I don't think that would work.
Yeah, I think it would be fun to do them as the actual comic book characters. I think you would have a group very similar to Guardians of the Galaxy. The fact that Marvel seems to be headed towards this new Avengers kind of aspect and doing the younger superheroes, yeah. I think that works too in favor of bringing Big Hero 6 in, because they are Hero again's in school. Honey Lemon and Go-Go, I think, are supposed to be just beyond school age, if not early 20s. So you got that. I'm not sure how old Wasabi and Fred are supposed to be. I kind of got the feeling in the comic that Wasabi's a little older. He's probably the oldest member of the team, but he's still young. Same thing with Fred. So yeah, it would be interesting. I don't see it happening though. I really don't. I think that Disney's already made their stamp on Big Hero 6. They are now characters that, they can sell product with, and I think they would confuse their audience too much if they switched them up in any way, shape, or form to bring them into the MCU.
Right. I think if Disney really wanted to do anything else with Big Hero 6, it would just be smarter to make a sequel. But yeah,
keep them a Disney property.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's get into it. Our rating on the podcast: bag it, stack it, or trade it. Everybody knows what this means. So go ahead, Deanna. Do you bag it, stack it, or trade it?
Ooh. Probably stack it, I would say. I mean, I haven't actually read the comic, but, like, it sounds like it's so out of the realm of what I've been into with superheroes. It's just kind of, like, midway for me.
Well, you got to keep them separate. So honestly, when we're talking about this, you're literally just talking about the movie, which they did release comics that were based off of this version.
Yes.
You know, they were the Disney's Big Hero 6 comics. So there are those, but I didn't want to get into those because that's not what the movie was based on in terms of there were comic books based on the movie. We're talking about movies based on comic books. So the comic books that they were based on is not the case. But I'm with you. I say stack it. It's a decent Disney movie. It's not one of my favorites. I honestly don't think I watched it. I watched it the first time, and I don't think I watched it again until you requested it to do for the podcast. So I only think I've watched it like 2 or 3 times in its entire life. And I knew it was a Marvel property, but I didn't even read the comics until you had mentioned wanting to do it. And then I sat down and read all 8 of the individual issues. But no, I'm definitely for stack it. And yeah, I wouldn't mind seeing a sequel. I wouldn't. I'd be interested to see if Disney wants to lay claim to these characters. I'd be very curious to see what they would do with them.
Yeah. And I really appreciated, I mean, even though I had nothing to do with the comic, just the way that they dealt with loss and stuff when it came to a kid and like things like that, which it's hard to portray that sometimes. But they included like drunk Baymax, I think is one of the funniest things. I mean, he's low battery Baymax, but you know what it's supposed to look like.
Well, and you know, of course, at this point, we've already had WandaVision, and we had the gum getting caught up in Vision's gears, which apparently makes him drunk.
Yes, which was also very, very funny.
Yeah. All right. Anything else you want to say? Any last words you have about Big Hero 6?
If you haven't watched it, I do highly recommend, as someone who watches most cartoons.
And honestly, like I said, Disney has something with it. You know, it was only one movie. It was released, 7 years ago? And I would bet if you were to go to Disney World, you would still see some Big Hero 6 merchandise and all kind of sitting around. So
yeah, I think they even have where you can meet Baymax in Epcot in like Tomorrow World.
Makes sense. Oh yeah, we didn't even talk about that even more. So what were your thoughts about you mentioned at the beginning, and I was going to bring it back up and I forgot. What did you think about the San Fransokyo? Pronounce it? Yeah.
It was weird. I wonder if they were trying to, I think I remember seeing something about it like before the movie came out, but it's just, I understand that they were trying to kind of, I guess, mix the American and the Japanese parts of it. I mean, and you said even in the comics, they're supposed to be Japanese, but some of them do look American. They have more American style looks, which I never asked if they look the same. Do they look the same as their comic book characters at all?
Ish. I mean, Wasabi is not African American. He looks like the quintessential like sushi chef. But the other characters, I mean, they're definitely Disney-fied.
Yeah.
But they do resemble. I will say it that way. They do resemble the characters.
And so I guess that's how they were able to kind of bring in more of that diversity, because really the only characters that actually look like Japanese characters are Go-Go, Hiro, Tadashi. Because even their aunt does not look Japanese. And I don't think any of the other characters really have a Japanese look. And I guess they were trying to diversify a bit with Wasabi. And usually, I think Fred's kind of like he seems kind of like the stoner friend. So, like, he's going to be, like, the more Americanized. So, I think it was an interesting concept that they came up with. And I don't think there's anything wrong with it. But it's definitely a Disney thing to do.
Oh, yeah. Most definitely. All right, so I know that this is an audio podcast, but I am going to throw up since Deanna is not familiar with the comic, I am actually throwing up a picture of what the team looks like.
That's awesome.
Can you see that?
Yeah. That's actually really cool.
So yeah, Hero, and then from left to right, there's Honey Lemon in her, bikini top and jacket.
Yep.
And then Wasabi with the sword, Go-Go in her suit. Like I said, her suit's what gives her powers. And then Fred there in the shirt, and then Baymax in his robot battle mode.
Yeah, I think the only one that really looks like his character is Fred. And maybe Honey Lemon a little.
Yeah, but yeah.
Oh, yep, there's Honey Lemon.
Yep.
Jeez.
Little lemon tattoo on her.
Oh, that's awful.
Yeah. Like I said, cringeworthy.
Yes, absolutely cringeworthy.
Cringeworthy. And there's what Baymax looks like when he's in his butler / bodyguard form.
Oh, that gives me Kingpin vibes.
Yeah, there's Honey Lemon and Go-Go there.
Yep, definitely, like you said, typical 90s comic look on that one.
Well, this is the 2008 run.
Yeah, but on the body types.
But yeah, but here's the part I was just talking about, where Go-Go and Honey Lemon meeting with Hero, and then Baymax is there, and he's headed to school, and then the other boys are saying, "How is it you know such incredibly gorgeous girls? That is not fair. Only one way to make things right. Give us their phone numbers."
That's so terrible. That's awful.
It's so bad. So cringeworthy. And then Hero even says, "People that beautiful, they're obviously secret agents. If I introduce you and break their cover, they'd have to kill you." And then those Foxies, that does say Foxies.
Yep.
You can, that says Foxies. Mm-hmm. Those Foxies, secret agents, that'd be so cool. Cringe.
That's very, very cringy.
Cringe. So there you go. So I know it's an audio podcast, but I kind of wanted to throw this out to show Deanna, since she's not familiar with the comics, what they looked like. And there is, I am Wasabi no Ginger. So there you go. All right. So thanks, Deanna. Thanks everybody for listening. Follow us on social media: Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, @MovingPanels, TikTok. I try to get out videos as often as I can. I'm also on there. Slow rise in TikTok. Sometimes I get 20,000 views. Sometimes I get 200. So we'll see how that continues to go. But and if you're ever interested, want to suggest something, want to give us some feedback, you can of course reach us on social media, or you can email me at movingpanels@gmail.com. But thank you, Deanna, for joining me once again and walking through Big Hero 6.
Yes, glad to be here.
For Moving Panels, I'm Laramy Wells, and I'll see you on the other side of the page.